The ad was a whisper in the dark corners of the internet, a single line that burned into Ezra's soul. Seeking companion for reclusive writer in Colorado mountains. 6 months. $50,000. He stared at the screen in his cramped Brooklyn apartment, the weight of unpaid bills and a shattered dream pressing against his ribs. At 28, Ezra Kane had nothing left but his pride, and even that was crumbling. He'd come to New York with stars in his eyes, chasing a career in photography, but the city chewed him up. His portfolio, once brimming with vibrant street scenes, now collected dust. Eviction loomed, and desperation had a way of making bad ideas seem brilliant. The ad was absurd, borderline sinister. A rich hermit buying company? Yet the money could be his lifeline, a chance to start over. Ezra typed a response, his fingers trembling, and hit send before doubt could stop him. 2 weeks later, he was on a Greyhound bus winding through the Rockies, the peaks jagged against a bruised sky. The air was crisp, scented with pine and freedom, but Ezra's gut churned. What kind of man paid for companionship? Predator? A loner with secrets buried in the woods? The bus dropped him at a desolate stop, where a grizzled driver in a pickup waited, eyeing Ezra's worn leather jacket and backpack with faint amusement. "You the one for Elias?" the driver grunted. Ezra nodded, throat dry, and climbed in. The cabin was a relic, tucked in a valley near Telluride, its cedar walls weathered but sturdy. Smoke curled from the chimney, and the windows glowed faintly against the dusk. Ezra knocked, his heart hammering. The door creaked open, revealing Elias Voss, 29, in a wheelchair. His frame was slight, his dark blonde hair falling into piercing blue eyes that studied Ezra like a page in a book. "You're early," Elias said, his voice low, almost melodic, with a trace of suspicion. "Come in. Don't expect tea and cookies." Ezra stepped inside, the warmth of a fire washing over him. The cabin was sparse but intentional. Bookshelves lined with novels, a typewriter on a cluttered desk, and a single photograph of a younger Elias standing on a cliff, wind in his hair. "You're the writer," Ezra said, more to fill the silence than anything else. Elias smirked, wheeling toward the desk. "And you're the one who sold himself to me. Let's not pretend this is a fairy tale." The deal was simple. 6 months of companionship, cooking, cleaning, and conversation for $50,000. No strings, no intimacy required, just presence. Ezra had expected a creep, but Elias was sharp, guarded, his wit cutting through the awkwardness like a knife. He was a novelist, once celebrated, now a ghost after a car accident stole his legs and his muse. "I don't need pity," Elias snapped when Ezra's gaze lingered on the wheelchair. "I need someone who can keep up." Days became a rhythm of routine and tension. Ezra cooked hearty stews, chopped firewood, and listened as Elias dictated fragments of a novel he couldn't finish. The writer's words were raw, haunted stories of loss and redemption that left Ezra's chest tight. At night, they sat by the fire, Elias reading aloud from dog-eared books while Ezra sketched the mountains in a notebook, his old passion flickering back to life. But Elias's walls were ironclad, his smiles rare and fleeting, like sunlight through storm clouds. One evening, after a week of silence heavier than the snow outside, Elias tossed a manuscript at Ezra. "Read it. Tell me it's garbage." Ezra hesitated, then dove into the pages. A story of a man trapped by his own grief, searching for meaning in a world that had moved on. It was unfinished, jagged, but it sang with truth. "It's not garbage," Ezra said, his voice catching. "It's you." Elias's eyes met his, unguarded for the first time, and something shifted. A crack in the armor. The next morning, Ezra found Elias outside, staring at the dawn. "I used to climb these peaks," Elias murmured, his breath visible in the cold. "Now I'm stuck down here, writing about a life I can't live. Ezra knelt beside him, his hand brushing Elias's shoulder. You're not stuck, he said fiercely. Your words climb higher than any mountain. Elias looked at him, his gaze raw, and for a moment, the world was just them. Two broken men finding something whole in the quiet. Winter tightened its grip on the mountains, and the cabin became a cocoon of warmth against the howling winds. Ezra and Elias settled into a fragile rhythm, their days filled with small intimacies, shared meals, late-night talks, the clack of Elias's typewriter as Ezra chopped wood outside. But beneath the surface, a current of unspoken tension simmered. Ezra felt it in the way Elias's eyes lingered on him, in the way his own pulse quickened when their hands brushed over a shared book. Ezra, with his broad shoulders and calloused hands, was no stranger to hard work, but the isolation of the mountains tested him. At 28, he'd spent years running from his past. A conservative family in Ohio who'd called his bisexuality a sin, a string of lovers who never stayed. The cabin was supposed to be an escape, a transaction, but Elias's presence was unraveling him. The writer's sharp tongue and guarded heart were a puzzle Ezra couldn't resist solving. One night, a blizzard trapped them inside, the power flickering. Elias, usually composed, grew restless, his hands gripping the arms of his wheelchair. I hate this, he muttered, staring at the snow piling against the windows. Being caged. Ezra dragged a chair close, their knees almost touching. You're not caged, he said softly. You're here with me. Elias's laugh was bitter. You're paid to say that. Ezra leaned forward, his voice low. I'm not that good of a liar. The air crackled with something dangerous and alive. Elias's blue eyes searched Ezra's face, and for a moment, neither spoke. Then Elias reached out, his fingers grazing Ezra's jaw, tentative but deliberate. Ezra froze, his heart a drumbeat, before leaning into the touch. Their lips met, slow, hesitant, then hungry, like two people starved for something real. The kiss was a confession, a collision of need and fear, and when they pulled apart, Elias whispered, "This wasn't part of the deal." The days that followed were a dance of closeness and retreat. Elias threw himself into his writing, the typewriter's rhythm relentless, as if he could outrun his feelings. Ezra, meanwhile, found himself photographing the mountains again, capturing their stark beauty with a lens he hadn't touched in years. He showed Elias the prints one evening, his hands shaking as he laid them on the table. "These are good," Elias said, his voice soft with awe. "You see things I can't." Ezra smiled, his chest tight. "I see you." But the past was never far. One afternoon, a letter arrived, forwarded from Elias's old publisher in Denver. Ezra watched as Elias tore it open, his face paling. "They want the manuscript," he said, his voice hollow. "They think I'm finished." Ezra knelt beside him, fierce. "You're not finished. You're just starting." Elias's hand found his, their fingers intertwining, and for the first time, Ezra saw hope in the writer's eyes. Yet doubt lingered. Ezra caught Elias staring at the photograph of his younger self, the one on the cliff, and felt a pang of inadequacy. Could he ever be enough for someone who'd lost so much? And Elias, for all his fire, seemed haunted by the same question. Could he let himself love when he'd spent years building walls? The cabin, once a refuge, began to feel like a crucible, forging something beautiful but fragile. Spring crept into the mountains, thawing the snow and softening the edges of the valley. The cabin felt alive with new energy. Elias's manuscript grew, page by page, and Ezra's photographs adorned the walls, a gallery of moments captured in light and shadow. Their connection deepened, marked by stolen glances and quiet touches, but the weight of their arrangement hung over them. The 6-month contract was nearing its halfway mark, and neither dared speak of what came next. Ezra, now 29, found purpose in the routine. Mornings spent hiking with his camera, afternoons helping Elias refine his prose. Elias, also 29, was writing with a ferocity Ezra hadn't seen before. His novel a tapestry of pain and redemption. But vulnerability came at a cost. One night, as they sat by the fire, Elias confessed, "I was engaged before the accident. Her name was Clara. She left when I couldn't walk anymore." His voice broke, and Ezra's heart ached. He took Elias's hand, his thumb tracing circles. "She didn't see you," he said. "I do." Their intimacy grew, tentative but undeniable. They shared a bed one night after a long talk, their bodies curled together under heavy blankets, the warmth of their closeness more comforting than the fire. But the outside world began to intrude. A local journalist, tipped off about Elias's reclusive life, showed up at the cabin, camera in hand. "Elias Voss, the fallen prodigy," the man sneered, snapping photos before Ezra chased him off. The encounter left Elias shaken, his old fears resurfacing. "They'll never let me forget," he said, his voice raw. "I'm a story to them, not a person." Ezra, furious, drove into Telluride the next day, confronting the journalist at a diner. "He's more than your headline," Ezra snapped, his fists clenched. The journalist smirked, tossing a business card. "Tell him to finish the book. The world's waiting." Back at the cabin, Ezra found Elias at his typewriter, his face set with determination. "I'm going to finish it," Elias said, his voice steady. "For me. For us." Ezra kissed him fiercely, pride swelling in his chest. But tension brewed. Ezra's contract loomed like a guillotine, and he began to wonder if Elias saw him as more than a hired companion. One evening, during a rare argument over a spilled coffee pot, Elias snapped, "You're here because I paid you." The words cut deep, and Ezra stormed outside, the mountain air cold against his burning face. He sat on a stump, staring at the stars, questioning everything. Was this love, or just a transaction? When he returned, Elias was waiting, his eyes red. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm scared. I've lost everyone I've ever loved." Ezra knelt, their foreheads touching. "You won't lose me," he said, his voice fierce. "I'm not here for the money anymore." They held each other, the cabin silent except for the crackle of the fire, and for the first time, Ezra believed they could rewrite their story. Summer painted the mountains in vibrant greens, the valley alive with wildflowers and the hum of life. Ezra and Elias were no longer just companions. They were partners, their days filled with laughter, shared dreams, and the steady rhythm of Elias's typewriter. The manuscript was nearly complete, a testament to Elias's resilience, and Ezra's photographs had become a visual echo of the story, capturing the beauty of their world. But the end of the contract loomed, a shadow neither could ignore. Ezra, now fully settled into his role, began to dream of a future beyond the cabin. He imagined a life with Elias, maybe in Denver, where Elias could reconnect with the literary world, where Ezra could sell his photographs. But Elias grew quiet as the deadline approached, his old fears resurfacing. "What happens when the money runs out?" he asked one night, his voice barely a whisper. Ezra cupped his face, his eyes fierce. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. "This isn't about the contract anymore." Their love was tested when Elias's publisher arrived unannounced. A sleek woman named Margaret who carried the weight of New York's literary elite. She read the manuscript, her eyes widening. "This is brilliant," she said, but her gaze lingered on Ezra with suspicion. "Who's this?" she asked, and Elias hesitated, the word partner catching in his throat. Ezra's heart sank, but he forced a smile, playing the role of hired help. That night, alone in their bed, Elias reached for him. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he said. "I'm just scared of losing this." Ezra kissed him, soft and sure. You won't. The publisher's visit stirred something in Elias. He began writing late into the night, his story pouring out with a clarity that left Ezra in awe. But the pressure took its toll. One morning, Elias collapsed, his body trembling from exhaustion and stress. Ezra carried him to bed, fear gripping his chest as he called a doctor from Telluride. "He's overworked," the doctor said, prescribing rest. Ezra stayed by his side, reading aloud from Elias's favorite books, their hands intertwined. As Elias recovered, Ezra made a decision. He drove to town, sold a series of his photographs to a local gallery, and used the money to buy a ring, a simple silver band etched with a mountain silhouette. He proposed that evening, kneeling by the fire. "I came here for money," he said, his voice breaking, "but I'm staying for you." Elias's eyes filled with tears, and he nodded, pulling Ezra into a kiss that felt like a vow. The manuscript was finished in late August, its pages a testament to Elias's heart and Ezra's unwavering support. They sent it to the publisher, and within weeks, offers poured in. New York, London, even Paris wanted the story of a man who'd found redemption in the mountains. But the victory felt bittersweet. The contract's end was days away, and though Ezra had proposed, doubt lingered. Could they build a life beyond the cabin? They decided to leave the mountains, moving to Denver for a fresh start. Elias, now 30, was nervous but determined, his wheelchair no longer a cage but a part of his story. Ezra, also 30, rented a small studio where he could work on his photography, his prints gaining traction in local galleries. Their love was a quiet strength, built on months of vulnerability and trust, but the world outside was less forgiving. At a book launch in Denver, Elias faced a crowd for the first time in years, his voice steady as he read from his novel. Ezra stood in the back, his heart swelling with pride. But whispers followed, about Elias's disability, about Ezra's role as the hired companion. A cruel article surfaced, calling their relationship a transaction, and Elias spiraled. "Is that what they see?" he asked, his voice breaking. Ezra pulled him close, fierce. "They don't know us. They don't know love." The turning point came when Elias was invited to speak at a literary festival. He almost declined, but Ezra pushed him. "You're not the man in the accident anymore," he said. "You're the man who wrote a masterpiece." On stage, Elias spoke of loss, resilience, and love. His eyes locked on Ezra in the crowd. "I was broken," he said, his voice clear, "but someone saw me, and he stayed." The audience rose, applauding, and Ezra's eyes burned with tears. Back in their Denver apartment, they built a life not perfect, but theirs. Elias wrote a new novel, inspired by their story, while Ezra's photographs hung in galleries across the city. The ring on Elias's finger caught the light as he typed, a reminder of the vow they'd made. They'd come to the mountains as strangers, one selling his time, the other his solitude. But in the end, it wasn't Elias who was destroyed by his past, nor Ezra by his desperation. It was the walls between them that crumbled, leaving only love, raw, real, and unbreakable.